It appears to be a big win for the animal lovers, particularly the dog lovers, as Supreme Court has modified its August 11 order. Now, a three-member Supreme Court bench headed by Justice Vikram Nath has stayed its 11th August order directing the Delhi government to permanently relocate stray dogs from streets to dog shelters in Delhi NCR. Now, the order prohibits the re-release of dogs back to the streets and mandates sterilization, immunization and deworming, and require that shelters be equipped with CCTVs, adequate staff, food and medical care. Modifying its 11th August order, the Supreme Court bench said that the dogs which are picked up must be released after the sterilization and immunization, except those infected with rabies or exhibiting aggressive behavior. Now, any obstruction to the exercise by animal activists would be treated as contempt of court. The Supreme Court also directed municipal authorities to create feeding areas, adding that there will be no feeding on streets. The top court also added that animal lovers can move application before MCD for adoption of dogs. All states and union territories have been issued notices to appear in the matter and give suggestions for framing a national policy. The Supreme Court's 11th August order drew strong objections from animal welfare groups who warned of cruelty and statutory violations. During the hearing, the court had criticized the Delhi government and civic bodies for failing to enforce the very regulatory framework they had created to manage stray dog population. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, representing the Delhi government, had then cited shocking instances of child mutilation and fatal dog bite injuries. He argued that immediate intervention was necessary to protect public safety. Well, it's a huge day of relief for all the dog lovers per se, as the Supreme Court bench has modified its 11th August order directing Delhi government to permanently relocate stray dogs from streets to dog shelters in the national capital. Now, while the order now prohibits the re-release of dogs back to the streets, mandates their sterilization, immunization and deworming, but it does require that shelters be equipped with CCTV, adequate staff, food and medical care. Now, there are, of course, animal lovers who are questioning the implementation of it, given the fact that there are not enough or adequate shelters for all the stray dogs to be accommodated. Now, Supreme Court, while modifying its August 11th order, also said that dogs which are picked up must be released after sterilization and immunization. Now, except those who are infected with rabies or exhibiting aggressive behavior. Now, while there has been several objections raised by the animal welfare organizations and activists, the Supreme Court has also stated that any obstruction to the exercise by animal activists would be treated as contempt of court. The court has also directed municipal authorities to create feeding areas, specific spots where feeding areas are going to be created. They have disallowed feeding of stray dogs in the middle of the road or at public places, that there will be no feeding on streets. And of course, now we do have a former union minister and a known animal lover, Manika Gandhi, speaking exclusively to News9. Let's listen in.
I'm currently being joined by Manika Gandhi, former union minister, on the stray dogs verdict by the Supreme Court. Ma'am, how do you see this verdict?
It's a step in the right direction, and I'm really grateful to the Supreme Court for basing it on science and on compassion.
Right, ma'am. Ma'am, they also mentioned the rabies and the sterilization of the aggressive dog. How do you see that? Will the authorities will be able to push forward to this?
Beta, rabies, so there is no question of it. A rabid dog has to be picked up and it cannot be released. In any case, rabies is a time-bound disease that kills the dog. So the dog will die. And regarding aggressive dogs, of course, they have to be sterilized. But we have to now ask the Supreme Court to make a definition of what is aggressive. because it becomes, most RWAs and municipalities are very self-serving. A politician will interfere in order to get votes, and he will say, oh, all the dogs should be removed because they're aggressive. Some people say dogs that sit on scooters are aggressive. Some people say the dogs that chase cars are aggressive. There doesn't seem to be one definition. So the word definition will have to be clarified. Does it happen with one bite? Does it happen with many bites? Does it happen with no bites at all? For instance, a dog that gives birth, hopefully there will be less and less, but a dog that gives birth, when she's sitting with her puppies, if you come and throw water at her or hit her with stones, would you blame her for being aggressive? So we have to decide what is aggression.
Ma'am, also now the dog lovers are saying that the public safety is being compromised after this verdict. What's your take on it?
No, what public safety is being compromised? It's a very good order that makes feeding in specific places, and that is a good order.
You just mentioned the specific feeding spaces. Do you think this will be possible by the authorities because we have more than 15 million dogs in India?
You have exactly 1.2 crore dogs, right? So, and they're getting less every year, but that's not the point. Of course, feeding spots are possible, and they have been made wherever they have been made. There has been no complaint. It's when they're not made by RWAs, by the colony head, by the police or the municipality, that is where we have the problem, because feeders then have no option but to go to the dogs rather than letting the dogs come to them.
What else could be done? What else model could be introduced to have a space between the animals and coexistence between animals and humans? What do you see?
Beta, in this specific dog case, I'm not going to refer to the other animals, but in this dog case, what really needs is for money to be put into this program. For instance, you take a place like Faridabad. Now, the ABC program in Faridabad is going extremely well, but the NGO that is doing it has been told to get their own center. Now, just suppose that NGO wanted to save money. They would have taken a really rubbish center. As it is, they've had to rent a building. So, ABC centers don't exist in 80% across the country. Those ABC centers will have to be built, and built according to the law. They cannot be built in garbage dumps. They cannot be built so that it's just one dirty room. They have to be built like proper small little hospitals. And that applies to Delhi to begin with. This is our national capital. We should have the best ABC centers here. But we don't. Chennai, for instance, has possibly the worst program in India. And 90% of the dogs come out of the centers either with distemper, in which case they will bite everybody because they're sick, or they are relocated. And we have been shouting at the Chennai Corporation to change for the last, I think, 10 years. So, same thing with Delhi. Your ABC centers are less than 5th grade. They're leaking in the roofs. They have no drainage. They're just one dirty little room. There is no cleaning. Those will have to be improved, because otherwise, if you don't have the proper centers, how do you make the program?
And that's not all. We also have Ambika Shukla speaking exclusively to my colleague Kabir Naqvi. Let's take a look.
Well, it seems to be a big day for animal lovers, specifically dog lovers, amidst the entire news headlines of stray dog menace. The Supreme Court has now come out with a modified order, the same order that was given by a 2-judge bench on the 11th of August. A 3-judge bench, which was brought into the scheme of things later, has now modified that order, and seems like that's a big relief for the animal lovers and the dog lovers to understand what this new fresh order entails and where do we go from here next. Joining me here is Ambika Shukla. Ambika ji, how do you read the latest order that's come out? And more importantly, where do we go on from here?
We are deeply grateful for the reversal, complete reversal of the earlier order of removing dogs to shelters, which was an impractical and unscientific approach to the situation. So there will be no relocation. All the dogs who've been illegally impounded over the last 10 days since that order was released will now be returned to their original locations. We need to understand the danger of relocation. What happens because of relocation? When you take friendly, familiar dogs from their area where they live and remove them elsewhere, what happens is you create a vacuum. Other dogs, other animals move in. These are unfamiliar to the area. They do not know the residents. They do not have a source of food. They feel frightened, afraid, and those are the conditions where they may react. So you are actually aggravating the situation through relocation. This is why the ABC rules prohibit relocation, and we are glad that the Supreme Court has reiterated and emphasized that relocation is illegal.